Thanks for joining us. Well, it is my honor to be sitting here next to one of the last living Holocaust survivors, Carla Peperzak. Thank you for letting us into your home and chatting with you.
You're welcome.
And for sharing your story. So Carla, when the invasion occurred, you were 16 years
16,
old.
yeah.
So you do remember a lot of what happened. So,
Absolutely.
So could you walk us through that?
Well, it's not so easy to walk through that, but I can, from my point of view and from what I was doing actually my final exams when the invasion took place, and this was the written part, and the oral part was postponed for months, and we did that later on.
Okay.
This was actually in May 1940, and I was, like I said, I was 16 at the time. In the very beginning, there wasn't all that much of a change, and actually, though they installed right away a Nazi government, and they said it was a civilian government, which it wasn't, because the head of the government was an SS officer. I remember his name, Sijs Inkworth, and he was there all 5 years.
Okay.
And also they, not too far after the invasion, they actually dismissed all the Jewish civil servants and also Jewish professors. The universities were still open then. Like I said, there was not. We still could go and do things, go take a streetcar, take a bus, and so on. Life did not change that much in the beginning.
Okay.
And I was actually very active in a rowing club, which the rowing club was 90. It was not a Jewish rowing club, but 95% of the members are Jewish.
Okay.
So. And that we did still rowing also in the beginning, and then, but slowly but surely they started getting all measures against Jewish people. They did it so slow that just one measure, then maybe a month later another measure. So people were not all that much upset about it. But
right.
And they said, well, one of the first things they did was having Jewish people register, because there was no good registration from Jewish people in the Netherlands. Like I said before, this was an open society, and one did not have to fill out any religion, any at all.
Right.
Nobody needed to do that. And so they had to do that. And then the next step was that for everybody, anybody over 15 years of age needed an ID card, and the Jewish people's ID card had a J on it. And they also actually had there's a number here, and they had the numbers were only 60,000 for the Jewish people.
Oh,
and
so that's like your identification
that wasn't,
number?
In the numbers here, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yours doesn't have a J. Why is that?
I had I was registered Jewish, so I had a J on my ID card, and so did my sister. And my father realized that, hey, the situation is such that eventually measures will be taken against the Jewish people. Mm-hmm. And so he got an attorney in hand, and I heard later that attorney, quite a few other people, he managed to, I don't know how much money, but he got me a new ID card without the J.
So you got your ID without the J?
Yeah. And the J, and then of course we all had to wear this on the left-hand side. Mm-hmm. And I could take those off my clothes.
So that's your original Star of David?
That is an original star, yeah.
Wow.
And you had to cut it off here, and then you fold it over, and then you sewed it on.
Okay.
It was mainly at home, of course. You didn't have to wear it, but when you went outside. And
okay. So how did that work? Because you got your J removed from your ID card,
So
but
I
yet you still
removed
had to wear
all the
star.
stars.
Oh, okay.
The ones, I have a picture, and I don't know whether it's on the PowerPoint, but I don't have the picture at hand, where you can see me sitting there with a star on my clothes.
Wow.
With a couple of other friends I had.
So how long did it take? You said the process was slow, and a lot of people didn't necessarily realize it because it all happened so slow.
Yeah.
But how long did it take for you to really realize?
What?
How long did it take for you to really realize? Okay, there's something going on.
I think I knew that probably within a couple of months, because we heard from Germany what had happened there, and though officially we did not really get too much information, but we had quite a few. My father had quite a few business people he knew in Germany, and they closed their business and they were sent them to camp. Supposedly they were labor camps. Of course, they were concentration camps. They also, by the way, had all Jewish businesses, which were about 23,000, and over the whole of the Netherlands registering. And then they were told that they could not have the Jewish could not be a director or an owner of a Jewish business. So they either had to sell it, or they had to find somebody who could be a non-Jewish person, a director. Quite a few businesses then closed. Some were taken over by German companies, and some of them manufactured a bit longer. My father manufactured women's clothes, coats and suits and fur coats, and for a while he could continue, but then he had to close down. And what he did, he still had quite a bit of fabric, and he rented in the name of a person, a non-Jewish person, an apartment, and he put in some of the machines and the material, and continued manufacturing a little bit, but then lots of it was stolen, and he could not go to the police, of course, because what he did was at the time supposedly illegal, to continue doing that. So he lost everything, and so eventually most of those Jewish businesses were either gone or taken over. They also, and that was a bit later, all Jewish bank accounts were confiscated, and safety deposit boxes were confiscated. And the stock market, all your stocks, they were confiscated. So they really managed slowly but surely to get, have Jewish people have no income, and so they also lost jobs, of course, all around, because definitely all government jobs, no Jewish people allowed to any government job or any university at the time when it was still open, or schools.
At that age, did you understand why these things were being done to Jewish people? Like, did that make sense to you at that age?
That's a very interesting question, because we still ask why.
Right.
It's not. There is no answer to it. There is. You can always, but it's all on the outside. So many people hate Jewish people. Why? I don't know. For the longest time, the Catholic Church said, it was the Jewish people who killed Christ. Well, of course, it was not the case.
Right.
But and finally, the church, I think in the 1950s, they finally said that was a mistake and it shouldn't be did. But there's still anti-Semitism, and maybe jealousy, maybe whatever. In case of Germany, I think what happened was that after the First World War, they had to Versailles, the Treaty of Versailles. They were really they lost an awful lot on that treaty. They It was very difficult to live in Germany in those years. Immediately after that First World War, life was very expensive, and they had nothing, and that was because of the peace treaty, which
Right.
was signed at the time, which was terrible for Germany. There's no income, and there was a tremendous inflation, and so people had a hard time. So when Hitler came, they liked him because he promised he would take care of all that, and he did to a certain extent. But then, he was definitely very, very anti-Semitic, and of course by confiscating all the Jewish bank accounts, he got a lot of money too,
Right.
on top of it. So anyhow, what happened really, that when I could get rid of my star,
Right.
and by this time also they, like I mentioned before, the measurement on no Jewish people were allowed in the streetcars. They were not allowed in most stores. There were Jewish stores, and I can show you actually a picture of that, where Jewish people could buy, but a lot of other stores they were not allowed in. And so here, all of a sudden, I could do those things again. I could go in a streetcar, on a bus, or a railroad, a train.
Did you know many others that had their J's removed, though?
No, but there were maybe, I don't know how many altogether, but maybe 100 at the most.
Wow.
But I did not know anybody else.
Right.
But that was another interesting thing. You really didn't talk about those things with other people, because
Okay.
it became whatever you said became dangerous, because you didn't know
Right.
how the other people would react. But anyhow, I got involved actually with my uncle, the brother of my father's, asked me if by 1942, it was obvious that the Jewish people were being sent to camp, and we did not know that they will all be killed, but it was obvious that it's going to be terrible.
Right.
And so an uncle, and so some Jewish people, one tried to go into hiding, and actually quite a few. By the way, there were 158,000 people registered in September, and the Netherlands lost most Jewish people of all the European countries, because only after the war there were like 24,000 left. And that was all, the percentage-wise, not number-wise,
Right.
but percentage-wise. And anyhow, my uncle asked me if I knew a place where they could go into hiding. And so I knew somebody I could ask, and I did, and we found him a place. He has a wife and 2 little kids to go into hiding. And so I took them there. Now, by this time, of course, like I said, everybody had an ID. And when people went into hiding, we tried to get them a new ID without a J. And many of those were printed, fraudulent, of course, in England.
In England?
In England. The Dutch government, the Queen and family, and the part of the ministers mainly, in the 5 days the invasion took place, they went to the UK and went into hiding. Well, left Holland.
To get fake IDs, right?
And they then in turn helped the underground to get to whatever they needed. They had some money, and they would get by, I wasn't involved with that at all, but they would buy ammunition and guns and so on, and would be sent over either by boat or by small airplane to Holland, and usually in the middle of the night. And the underground then was by code, knew that some shipment was coming in, and so those were coming in also on shipment, and often those were lighter than all the other stuff. They would come in by plane, small planes, and they would be By this time, by the way, also all radios were confiscated, so nobody had a radio. But some people, of course, kept the radio.
Right.
And we had. I became part of the underground. This is really what happened when I asked for the assistant to find a place, and then I had to get new IDs for them. So I had to ask for new IDs, and slowly but surely I became part of the what they call the resistance movement.
The resistance movement.
Yeah, which is what we called in Holland underground.
Okay.
And so through the underground. From the UK, I got a little machine to make the thumbprint, and I got those cards.
For those people.
For the people who went into hiding. I made many more. I made about 100 of those. I actually became quite good at it, because you also needed a seal, you see, and the people themselves had to have a picture, but...
so did you make these for family, or...?
No, for people who went into hiding mainly.
Okay.
Yeah, some for family and for friends.
Mm-hmm.
For, of course, people who needed it.
Right.
And there was quite a story about that. One time well, actually, I was being interrogated by 2 SS soldiers or officers, and I spoke fluent German at the time. I don't do that anymore. And one of the things, well, they asked me all kind of questions. I don't remember what the questions were, but I passed, because I not only that I spoke fluently German, but I also started flirting with them. And that was the best thing to do, because, they were sort of taken in by that.
Right.
And so they left, and I passed the test.
Mm-hmm.
And I had all this stuff in a small little suitcase. And I had to go myself, and so I carried this suitcase with me. And one of the officers said, "Let me carry that for you." So he carried that outside for me. I went back.
So he carried the bag with all of those
If
things.
it had been opened, or if they had opened it, or it had fallen open,
right,
I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be sitting here. So, but anyhow, one thing started another, and I could help many more people and friends to go into hiding. And
so what happened to all of your family then?
Well, they knew me too well. I think they did. I asked an aunt and a family, and another aunt and a family. Mm-hmm. I suggested that they would go into hiding, and they said no. Mm-hmm. And an uncle, then they said no. And one aunt said, "Oh, we are taken care of," and they were not taken care of, and they were all sent away.
Did your immediate family go into hiding?
My sister, no, my father and mother were not really into hiding, because my father had number one, that he had this attorney, but number two, my mother was not Jewish. And so that helped for my mother not to have to go into hiding.
Right.
And my father was picked up twice, going back, and I don't know how he did that. We never talked about it. Mm-hmm. But he lived through the war, and so did my sister.
So we were talking about the map, and you said the train went in.
Yeah, the train went from Rotterdam to Amsterdam and then to Westerbork. And the neighbors called me that they were on this train. Mm-hmm. And I did not say that before, but I studied medical technology after high school. At first I was at the University of Amsterdam, and I couldn't stay there, of course. And then I went to a private college where where no Jewish kids were allowed, and we did not have to sign any loyalty declaration to the Nazi government. This is a very small college, and so I studied medical technology, and because of that I worked in the hospitals, in the laboratories, and I got myself a German nurse's uniform, and I bought that, and I had also. And I don't think that's here, but I got a German Ausweis, what they call it. I have it in the book there. Anyhow.
And what's that?
In German?
It's a German
Ausweis means, that's a good question. this is an Ausweis too, and I'm trying. It is a piece of paper where it shows that basically it's it's not an ID, but it is a piece of paper where it shows that you are allowed to do this or that.
Okay.
This is the piece of paper where it showed my husband was exempt of the work in Germany.
Okay.
And then after, when he got the when they picked him up the second time, they said it's not valid anymore. But so I had a valid German nurses certificate, which
Okay.
the word certificate is not right either. I'm trying to think what the best translation
But
is.
a form of documentation.
It's just documentation.
Uh-huh.
And that one I stole, actually, the German.
Oh, so you stole it, okay.
I filled in my own name and so on. And so when I went to the train station, but I put on my nurse's uniform. And when I was in a situation that, you don't know if something would happen, or I put on my nurse's uniform.
Right.
And I spoke fluently German, of course. Excuse me.
No, you're okay.
Anyhow,
but it made for a good security blanket, I'm sure, to have that.
And so I found her in the train, found the children and her, and I asked her if I could take the youngest with me. And the youngest is only 2.5. She was only too happy to do that. So I took him, and I was stopped actually by some Nazi soldiers, and I had to, and I explained, it was my little boy, and he was sick, and I had to get him to the hospital, and they accepted it. So I had him, and I had to get him. I couldn't take him to my parents; it was way too dangerous.
Right.
I could keep him, so I found a place for him and to go into hiding.
Mm-hmm.
But he was sent, and during a couple of years, excuse me, from home to home.
Mm.
And so he had very little love in those years. But after the war, my parents tried to adopt him, and the Dutch government did not kept on being responsible for the war orphans, for those kids who had lost their parents. So they never officially could adopt him, but they did take care of him, and for a number of years. And he was only 5 when he came to my parents, I think. But he had a very difficult time with school and to adjust to normal life, and he lied and so on. But he did manage to get through high school, and he actually got married, though my father helped him the rest of his life. And when he was in the mid-40s, he committed suicide. It was, his life was. He never really got over losing his mother and his siblings, so that was very sad. But he did get some kids himself. He married and got some children. So situations like that happened all along. I got involved with another situation where a woman who was actually, she was a good friend, and she lived in The Hague, which is not too far from Rotterdam, but her husband had also been picked up and sent to Germany to a camp, and then she was getting a baby, and went to a small clinic to get this baby, and in the meantime 2 SS officers went to her house, and the neighbor said that she had went to a clinic to get a baby, and told them what clinic she was in, which was not the nicest thing to do, but anyhow, they went. The good thing was that the neighbors did call the clinic, that they were on their way. So she got up. The baby wasn't even 24 hours old, and she got up and left the clinic without the baby. And then, as it turned out, they took this 24-hour-old baby with them.
Wow.
And so she called me because she knew I was involved with the underground, and to see if there was a way of getting the baby out of the hand of the Germans. And I tried all kind of things, and then I was told by, actually I had an uncle by this time working in Westerbork. He was not deported to Germany, but he was working there for a number of months in the hospital, though he wasn't medically trained. And he let me know through the underground again how dangerous it was, and that I should keep my hands off and not do anything. Then and 2 weeks later she decided, she had to be with the baby. So she gave herself up. And she had a little boy, also 5 years old. And so she and the boy went to Westerbork, joined themselves in, and were sent to one of the camps, I think Bergen-Belsen. And but she came back with the 2 kids, which was amazing.
Wow.
But she was, by this time, had cancer and died a couple of months later. But the children still alive, and one is in Holland and one is in Australia.
Wow.
So it's one of those miserable things what happened.
But I'm sure you have a lot of friends who went to camps. And
yeah,
I know
many of them, and most of them did not come back, but some of them come back. But like I said, after the war, immediately after the war, we did not know if people had gone to camp, if they had gone into hiding, or what really, or if actually some of them even fled. I had a boyfriend at the time, and his family had quite a bit of money, and they managed to get out of Holland, and they fled to the United States. They got to the States.
Wow.
And so, and then the interesting part was he kept on sending me letters which were completely, they opened them, and one or twice there was a little tea bag in, so we got real tea for and after the war he actually joined the Dutch division of the Canadian Army, and so did actually my brother-in-law, and so he fought actually in the Canadian Army and came back to Holland almost immediately after the war. And by this time he wanted to marry me. I said no, I decided not to. Anyhow, but that same happened to actually my brother-in-law, though he was at the time no brother-in-law. He became much later. His parents and his sister, and I have actually a picture of that, were taken away, were deported, and of course killed. And he himself fled, partly walking, partly taking a bus, though, not supposed to take, but he took all his Jewish parts, of course you take your star away. Because that was the first thing you did when you put people in hiding, you took their star away, and so. But anyhow, he managed to get to Portugal, took a boat to Cuba, and from Cuba he went to New York, and there he joined also the Dutch division of the Canadian Army, and he was sent back to London or to England. So he made count, and he helped, repair airplanes. When, by the way, the people who went into hiding, they had also, by this time the food was scarce, and we had ration cards. Now this is my husband. This was the main card, and on that you got every so many weeks thing like that, either for a loaf of bread or whatever they were selling, were having.
So each person had their own food
each
ration
person
card?
had their own rationing card. Yeah.
Okay.
This is my husband's, and they and so what we did, the underground, we raided the distribution centers, and so they gave me the cards, and I could give those to the people in hiding. So they could, you could not ask the host and hostess family to use their cards, because it was so little you got on it,
right,
to get some food, and in this way they had their own carts and got the food.
Mhm.
And they were, of course, all stolen, but
Mhm.
um, there are not too many numbers on here. So when there are not too many numbers, then then it can be used. The ID card had the numbers, so that was a bit harder to make
Okay.
sure that. So
To recreate.
yeah, but so I would visit the people I had in hiding maybe once a month, and would bring them a card and after 2 or 3 cards, and would and sometimes they needed medication, and if I was lucky, I could get it in the hospital where I did some work, and oftentimes I couldn't get it, but so I kept on helping the people who were in hiding.
That had to be hard for you to watch those people go through.
Nothing was
process.
easy, and you were always afraid because I did most of it on my bicycle.
Wow.
And interesting, I needed new bicycle tires, and you couldn't buy them. There was nothing left in the stores, and so the underground raided the sugar factory one time. Sugar now is a big no-no, but at the time it was terribly important. If you don't have food, then sugar helps a great deal. And so they gave me some sugar, which I could give to the people who were in hiding. I divided it, and I could use some of that to trade in to barter it for tires.
For new bike tires.
So I got two new bike tires, so I could use my bike again. A bike was the safest thing to use, actually, because if you were on a bike and you saw somewhere soldiers or whatever, something, they were stopped up, you could go on the street, or you turn around and you try to
maneuver around
try
it.
to avoid it. So, and of course there were no more cars. So the cars that were there was from the Germans. The cars were Jewish cars everywhere. It's confiscated too.
Right.
So you did not have any cars.
Something that I think is really interesting that you shared is your family's connection with Anne Frank's family.
Yeah.
So because you both grew up in Amsterdam, so what was the connection?
We lived, before they went into hiding, we lived very close to Anne Frank.
Okay.
Within a block, actually. And I went before the war to Reform Temple, and Frank and her sister Margot also went to that temple.
So you knew both of them then?
Oh yeah, I knew both of them.
Okay.
I know Ennis was about 5.5 years younger than I was.
Okay.
So, when you're 17, 18, or 16, this was before the war, you don't talk to an 11, 12 years old too much. So I knew her sister much better than anyone. However, we were actually in some stage place together, through the temple, because then you can have different ages of kids. And I have been at the house. They had they came from Germany, as you probably know. They had very large German furniture and a rather small apartment, but so it didn't quite fit in. I mean, it didn't look right, but it was. And the funny part is that I remember that so well. But yeah, and.
But I was asking you before we went on air, why do you think Anne Frank's story, out of all the stories of the Holocaust and out of all people's experiences, why is it hers that is stuck with society?
I think the main thing is she is very, very honest on what she was writing. I really got her feelings, and since she was so young, I think she was 13 when she started writing the diary. And it speaks to so many people, and especially to the young persons. But the main thing, I think, is that she described what happened, and without any embellishment, without anything on. And I think that's why it made such a terrible good impression on people, and that's why she has become. The book itself has become, her diary has become so popular because people like to read about it and
Right.
are very impressed. There is a new book now out, which I just recently bought, like last week,
Uh-huh.
and it's by the collected work of Anne Frank's, because the first diary which was published, the father took quite a bit out, because she didn't, it wasn't too, she and her mother didn't get along all that well, and it was, but there is a second part of, there's the second edition, or you don't want to call it edition, but the whole diary is published in there too, so you have the two diaries in
Right.
there.
Wow.
And then she did write a few other things too.
Mhm.
And,
But you've written your own too.
but I don't think you can compare the two.
But I think this is really special. It's called Keys of My Life. It's your memoir. And how long did it take you to write
Well, I
this?
started about 18 years ago.
Wow.
But I would write a little bit, and then I wouldn't write for anything for a long time. And I did it all in longhand.
Mm-hmm.
And then my youngest daughter said, well, we should type this. So she typed it up, and she corrected some of my writing. And then and so actually she wasn't living here. All this went by either email and telephone, and so I would send it up to her, or not email, but send it through the you copy it and you print it.
Oh,
and
fax it to her.
you fax it to her, and then she would fax it back, and I didn't agree what she did, and anyhow, so we did that for a number of years.
Wow.
And then I finally thought, now maybe this is only a year ago that I finally put the last chapters in. And
Right. Do you think that for those in a similar position as you, that are Holocaust survivors that are still living today, do you think many of them write about or like to talk about their experiences at all?
The interesting thing is, most of us did not talk about our experience for years and years and years.
Mm-hmm.
We tried to forget it, and that didn't work. And so the last 10, 12, 15 years, people started talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Why do you think that is? Why just
I
recently?
think, number one, many years in between, and we're talking about 50, 60 years later. Though it's still difficult, it's not that painful anymore as it was in the beginning.
Right.
And realizing, for me, I would try to forget, and I think most of us try to forget, and try to get on with life. And,
Sure.
And actually, people have asked me, about forgetting and forgiving and revenge, and I realized, I could not forget, and now I realize it's more important not to forget, but to
Right.
talk about it. And in the meantime, of course, all those years, I forgot a lot. So many details I don't remember. But at the same time, the more you talk about it, and sometimes all of a sudden comes up. Every talk I give is different, because somehow some memory comes in mind, and then I talk about it. And then, forgiving is also very, very difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I still have difficulty with German people,
Mm-hmm.
though, it's 2 generations later, and they have nothing to do with it anymore. And then
The concept of it's hard, though, I'm sure.
it is, yeah. Even a Mercedes and a Volkswagen, I would never own one, or something like that.
Right.
But then the revenge, and I think for me the best revenge is what happened, that I have 4 kids, 11 grandchildren, and 18 great grandchildren, and they didn't want us to have any. They wanted us to be dead, and I think that's the best revenge there is.
And you're still alive to talk about it.
And I'm still able to talk about it. Yeah.
Pretty neat.
Yeah, and that's amazing, and I don't know why.
I have never been more honored to chat with someone So I
You're
so
very
appreciate
welcome.
you letting us in your
It
home
took a while to get together.
and sharing, your Star of David
Mhm.
and so many other details about your life. It means a lot, and I know for so many young people that don't know much about the Holocaust,
Well,
this is
that's
so
really why I
informative.
want to talk about it. You cannot get your mind around 6 million people being killed. It's just, and not only it was 6 million Jewish people, but he also killed 3 million other people, the
Wow.
gays and the gypsies and yeah,
Mhm.
anybody who is
Different.
yeah, and not only who is different, but also who didn't agree with the government. If possible, they killed them.
Right.
And that's and you can say, okay, this is happening in Darfur and it's happening in different other places now these days, but Germany was at the time the most educated and the highly civilized country in Europe,
Wow.
and that happened for people who are that well educated. Their literature, their
Right.
arts, their music
Right.
was all tops.
Mhm.
It's so difficult to understand.
Mhm.
And that people went along with that. It's just.
Well, thank you for sharing it.
You're very welcome.
It's something we should never forget.
No, that's why I
And
talk about it.
That's right, and I so
Yeah, well, you can
appreciate
take
you
that
sharing
book.
this. Thank you. I appreciate
You're
it.
welcome.
Thanks for joining us for this very special discussion and interview with Carla Peperzak, and we'll see you next time.